Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, I'm going to be looking at password managers for Linux and a few other operating systems as well. So let's do that right after this. I want to look at three of them at least, but I have a fourth one that I want to kind of take a sneak peek at. It's still in beta. So the logos here you probably recognize as Bitwarden, KeyPass XC. May not recognize the third one. That's Buttercup. And then the one down here in the middle, that is Spectra. And that is not the Intel malware problem. So no, we're not talking about that today. All right. So let's start with some quotes. So first, Ben Franklin said that three people could keep a secret if two of them are dead. And then about 100 years later, Mark Twain modified that to two people can keep a secret if one of them is dead. So basically, the only person you can rely on to make sure that your identity remains a secret is you. And that's still the case today. So given that, how should we manage our passwords? And so that's what I'm going to be looking at today and talking about in depth. So password managers, what are they used for? What do we do with them? They're used to collect passwords on the sites and the services and servers that we access. And we store those passwords with other metadata like the URL. We might put a category in with it, like whether this is a financial related site, maybe this is a search engine, maybe this is YouTube, that sort of thing. So, but it allows you to retrieve those passwords based on the metadata or the URL that you're attempting to get to. Those passwords hopefully are encrypted using a strong encryption algorithm. And if they're not, then you should walk away from that password manager immediately. Probably run, don't walk. But this creates a problem because the stronger that those passwords are, the more difficult they are to remember because they usually get longer and longer. So how many characters can you remember? So AT&T found this answer. It was actually Bell Labs that did the research back in, I think it was in the late 50s. And they were looking at the time, they were switching over their network from the old call the operator and give her a code. It was an alphanumeric code on the phone you wanted to dial, and then they would plug you into that particular circuit and make the connection. So what they found out was when they started to go to the pulse dialers at that time, when they went to that, how many numbers should they be using to create the phone numbers? And they did research, and they found out that people can only remember up to 7 digits. Digits or numbers or letters or special characters. I mean, that's all they could remember is 7. So that's why our phone numbers are 7 digits long today. But if you were to make a password out of 7 characters, that's going to be a problem because those are pretty darn easy to crack. Even if you use the combination of upper, lowercase, special characters, and numbers, which would be the most secure that you could come up with, you would have a password that would take about 6 minutes to crack. And that's according to a study that was conducted by Hive Systems back in 2020. So it may be a little bit shorter today, but the performance of the systems haven't really improved all that much. Yeah, maybe a little bit. So password managers solve all your problems, right? No. What you really need them to do, though, is that if in today's world, you have to have some way of syncing your office, your home, your mobile applications so that you have the most current passwords available on all your devices for those websites or all those servers or whatever it is you're trying to access. But because you keep those passwords, you also need to store a backup because things go horribly wrong and you'll need some way to recover. And it isn't a question of if, it's a question of when something goes horribly wrong. So the other thing is that you end up having to hand over your trust to a company that now has all the keys to the doors of everything that you access and use. So yeah, if you really feel comfortable with that, I don't, but if you really feel comfortable with that, great. But we're now dependent on, the second thing is we're all dependent on a device in order to have access to our websites. You lose the device or you lose, the key to get into that particular vault or password database, you're in trouble. And a password is not enough. I mean, consider you're one hack away from them getting it all. If they wanted to target the best place to hit you, it would be at the password manager on the cloud, because they only have to crack one password and they've got everything. So yeah. So I sat down and everybody always talks about use cases today, but use cases aren't really all that important. Use cases, in my mind, I'm traditionalist and go back a ways. So use cases were always used to generate requirements, because use cases are the practical things that users do. And then you link that to the type of capabilities your system needs, and then you create requirements for those capabilities. Whether you call them requirements or goals, or whether you just create storyboards out of them, it's the same thing. In general, it's the same thing. You're really creating some measurement that you know that you've achieved whatever you needed the system to do, which is the whole reason why you do requirements in the first place. So these are some of my thoughts on some of the things that I'm looking for. Yours probably will be different. I'm looking for something that'll support Linux, Mac OS, and Android devices. I'm looking for something that is secure, of course, and I want the best security I can get, but I want to keep the passwords local. I don't trust the cloud. Probably never will. I want two-factor authentication, and I want to make sure, and I want two-factor authentication not only for the database, but I also want to be able to use it on the websites that I'm accessing. So in active development, it has to be in active development, because things change too quickly and the software needs to keep up with it. Sometimes there are vulnerabilities that are found in the libraries that they're using. Sometimes there are different needs that have come up, like maybe the password length needs to increase, which it has since I started anyway. It'd be nice if it was audited by independent researchers, but is that a deal breaker for me if it isn't? No, because it is expensive to do independent audits, and a person and a small project that is open source and free, they don't have the revenue stream in order to support hiring these expensive firms to come in and do a full security audit. So it's not really a deal breaker. It would seem like an oxymoron to ask for it to be free and then expect them to have to pay millions of dollars to some firm to do a security audit. I would like to also have it generate a random password for me, so that I don't have to write it down, figure it out, and come up with an algorithm that I want to use. I would prefer that it was multi-platform browser extension or whatever support, but I run ARM, and I'm running ARM here today, so I need both Intel and ARM in order to do that, and at least in my case. So I would like to have that. Password expiration monitor would be nice. I have this listed as a requirement, but to me, it's a nice to have. What that means is that when you change your password and it stores it and replaces the one that was there, it updates the date. And then you can, at some point, the system will tell you that, hey, this particular password is reaching your over age limit. So that could be whatever you set it to be. It could be 4 weeks, 90 days. It could be 6 months. Although I don't think I would recommend going quite that far. But yeah, whatever that is, that would then tell you, hey, this site on this password needs to be updated. So I would also probably want some kind of way to do full backcodes for access recovery, not only for the database, but also would like to have that for the sites. However, you don't want to store that in your password manager. You don't want to put your backup codes in your password manager. That would be a really dumb idea. So you would need to have that stored somewhere else. Multi-factor authentication is a nice to have. I would really like to see that. And again, password expiration, yeah, again, nice to have. Password strength monitor, is it weak? Is it a good password? Is it strong? And of course, that rating is going to change over time as well. So that's why you need to have active updates going on. Also, the password manager should lock the vault when it's idle. So if I'm not actively using or going to a new site, I want it to lock after so long a time, or whether, I don't want to wait for the screen to go idle. I want it to actually, after so long a time, it locks the vault, because leaving it open is a security risk. So like I said, those are the three I'm looking at: Bitwarden, KeyPass XC, and Buttercup. So why didn't I choose some of these? Why didn't I choose LastPass? Well, LastPass is closed source, and there have been trackers discovered in their code. Now, granted, these are ad trackers, but ad trackers track your location or where you're going. That's none of their damn business. I don't know why. I won't know why that belongs in there, other than somebody thought, hey, this would be a good idea to generate some revenue. I think it's a terrible idea, and so I wouldn't use LastPass. 1Password, also closed source. It's a good one. In the past, it was a good one. I don't think it has the reputation it once did. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have the reputation it once did. So that, again, closed source was enough to eliminate it for me. Dashlane, I don't know a lot about Dashlane, but I do know it's closed source. And again, that eliminated that off my list. Master Password, I've seen a lot of people recommend that one. So I went out and I found them on GitHub, and then I noticed that they hadn't been actively updated in a couple of years, and then read further on down in the README file, and it said, hey, we're not actively maintaining this anymore. We've moved over and we're starting to work on Spectra. Go over there and check that out. So I did, and Spectra is currently in beta. So I'll look at that when they reach release candidate status. I don't know when that'll be. I haven't seen a roadmap yet on their site that says, hey, this is our plans for rollout. I don't know when that is. I'm sure they have a target, but I don't know when that'll be. What about XYZ app? Well, either I didn't know about them, which is possible, or I didn't trust them, and so I didn't include them in the list. Also, you might find some people say, well, I just simply use an encrypted file and I put my passwords in there and that works great for me. Well, I'm glad it does, but I bet it's not too easy to maintain it. And again, that isn't what I'm looking for. I want some level of automation that will synchronize across my devices, and that certainly won't do that. So yeah, and in some devices you would have to come up with a mechanism to read that encrypted file and still maintain it as being encrypted. But how long a password should you have? That's always a good question. Right now, the current thinking that I have and what I've read is that a minimum is 18 characters. Minimum 18 characters. Yeah, you can go longer. And there are probably some places that require longer than that, depending upon the level of security. But I'll explain why that is and the amount of time it takes to crack. And so if I were to fill in that 18 character password with all numbers, it would take about 9 months. This would be a single server with a graphics card, a graphics processor, to guess that password, just to brute force it. But if I added lowercase letters to those numbers, it would take about 23 million years. If I added upper and lowercase, it's about 6 trillion years, 100 trillion for numbers lowercase and uppercase letters, and then 7 quadrillion years if I include special characters. So don't you think that's a little excessive? Well, no, because that's looking at it from a single server. But what a lot of these people do is they put 20,000, 40,000 servers on it. And yeah, that reduces the amount of time significantly that it would take to crack the password. So yeah. But what if it's a quantum computer? So the definitive answer is I don't know. But based on, only RSA 32, I think, has been cracked, which was cracked a long time ago anyway. But they have gotten that far with it. So yeah, this has been 20 years ago. They cracked RSA 32. So that's been a while. So that's not a really good standard to look at and say, oh, well, it's going to take me this much time. The general feeling is, and this is the speculation, is that a quantum computer would take that 18-character long password and it would be equivalent to a 9-character password. So the amount of time is significantly reduced in cracking the password. And so it would reduce it, in theory, to 3 weeks for a fully qualified number, special characters, upper and lower case password. So, that's a guess, okay? And so you might come up with a different guess than mine, and that's fine. So Hive Systems came up with this, and I'll finish this, when I get this video done, I'll blow this up for you so you can actually see it. If you're using pin codes, which are 4 or 6 digit long, it's not a good idea to be using pin codes at all. And you can see from the chart, those can be cracked almost instantly. So pin codes, I wouldn't, no, don't recommend using pin codes at all. For passwords, you can see that you stretch out to about 16, 17, you go from weeks to 93 million years. But then when you go to the 18th digit, it really expands it way out. So, yeah. And so that's why I picked 18, is based on their information. So if you want the best, and remember, the longer the password is, the longer it takes to decrypt it or to create the hash that you need in order to do it. So Bitwarden is the first one we're going to look at. And of course, it is open source. Its initial release, it's been around a while, August 10th, 2016 or so. They do still offer a free version, so you do not have to pay for it. And that will give you a free cloud account as well, which you need in order to be able to synchronize your data. So you store the passwords up in the cloud, not on your local file system, for the free account. Premium account adds a cost of about $10 a year, and I'll go over what all you get for that. Family plans are $33.33 a month. And then teams on corporate sides, you can get those for $3 per month per person. Enterprises, $5 per month per person, according to their website. And then they have negotiable plans that are available for larger organizations. So I assume there's some kind of quantity discount that's involved there. So you'd have to talk to them about that. As far as the free account, you get an open source. It is what they call zero knowledge encryption. I would just say it's strongly encrypted. However, they do use SHA-256. And at the end, I'll explain. I think that's a problem. So it is unlimited devices plus syncing that you get. It's unlimited device types. The browser is supported, and there's mobile apps and there's desktop apps. I think it is an app image. I think it's an app image for them, for Linux. There's no limit on how many items you have in your vault. The vault database, same thing. So some of them call it databases, some of them call it vaults. But in that database or vault, you can store notes and credit cards and identity information and identity credentials. The Bitwarden send, which is the synchronization part of this, is only able to send text. So it will not allow you to attach a file to the particular record that's in your database account. So it is a basic, what they call a basic two-step login. So there's no YubiKey, UTF, or Duo. I assume it's OTP probably. They do provide free cloud hosting, and there's an encrypted export that's available. And there's max users of 1. You can only have 1. Premium account adds all those same features, but it includes, in addition to that, you can encrypt shared files over the send. So the Bitwarden send now encrypts text and files, so you can attach files to your database and send those as well. Two-step also includes YubiKey, Duo, and UTF. Encrypted attachments up to 1 gig, and TOTP authentication is also supported. There's also Vault Health Reports. Now that would be things like your password strength and the amount of time it has passed since you last changed your password. So it would tell you that. There's also emergency access. If you lose your password, you can get access to the account, probably through jumping through some hoops to do that. There is a self-host option available to the premium account, so you can put it your own server and then use that to store your password data. Probably more geared towards enterprise, probably overkill for the home user. But again, if you're paranoid like me, you can go through that effort and do that. Priority support, and we've already talked about the cost. KeePass. KeePass has a long and sordid history. It's been around a long time. It originally came out as KeePass for Windows, and then the first Linux versions came out with KeePass X, which is a fork of KeePass. KeePass, by the way, is still actively maintained. in its original form. So these are probably people that were dissatisfied with the development in some way and wanted to do something different, and so they forked it. The latest fork is KeePass XC, so that's a different development team than KeePass or KeePass X. I don't know if KeePass X is actively. I didn't check that, so I don't know. If you do know, put in a comment below and let me know. But it does allow you to have, now they call it a database and it is encrypted. Although, but they do provide cross-platform Linux, Windows, and Mac OS support. They do allow you to create and open databases through their client, and you can store sensitive information by group. So I can group my logins by financial or shopping or whatever category I want to create for those. Then you can search for those entries, either on any of that metadata to find something. There is a password generator, and there is the capability to autofill passwords through the browser extension. There is an entry icon download, so you can have an icon carried with the entry. That probably would represent the logo for the site or something that might help remind you of what it is. You can import databases from CSV, 1Password, and other KeePass1 databases. There is a database health reporting, which again looks at the age of the password and the strength. There's a database export, and there's TOP storage generation. Now, just like Bitwarden, KeePass also gives you the ability to store your credentials with and into the KeePass data store. I'm not too crazy about that idea personally, but yeah, it's there if you want to use it. It also supports file attachments, and there is a command line support if you're doing that. And I'll explain one of the things you can do with the command line version of it. But a mobile app is not on their in their GitHub repository, so that's not provided. At least I didn't see it, and I don't think they provide the apps for Android and iOS. They do refer to it. They recommend these two: KeePass DX for iOS and KeePass 2 Android for the Android phones. So yeah, or devices. What about 2FA? So it's kind of 2FA, but it's not. It's not what I would call 2FA. It's what they call 2FA, but even they admit it's not what you would expect 2FA to do. In other words, it's not maintaining 2FA to the website you're trying to access. YubiKey can be used to secure the database, but it only supports one key. So if you got multiple users trying to use that same database, no, won't work. Also, UTF and TOTP won't work because KeePass XC is written for an offline environment, and that's their philosophy. And so that support isn't there because it's an offline database, and you have to be online for those to work. There are browser extensions for Firefox and Chrome and Chromium and Vivaldi. Firefox ESR is partially supported, but there are limitations in the web extension APIs in Firefox ESR that makes it impossible to implement the full suite of that you would find in the extensions in the other browsers. If you have the client version, you can use the SSH agent that comes with it to store SSH keys and credentials. So when the database is locked, those keys disappear, they're gone. And when it's unlocked, it puts them back out. So unlike if you were storing them in your .ssh file, those keys are always there. So, yep. Buttercup, also open source, and it is free to use. It does do an encrypted vault. It uses 256 AES encryption, and it is cross-platform. It does support Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. There are mobile apps for Android and iOS. They do have a browser extension for Chrome and Firefox. They are an app image on Linux. However, I also noticed they have app images for not only 32-bit and 64, but they also support ARM 64 and ARM 7. So your older Raspberry Pis and your newer Raspberry Pis can be supported in this environment as well, which is nice. That's pretty nice. Synchronization, they use Dropbox or Google Drive and WebDAV, and that's encrypted, of course. You can create an open vault, so you can import from LastPass and other sources as well. It does provide support for autofill passwords, meaning that when you reach the site, it'll autofill the user ID and the password. It also has the ability to recognize that a password needs to be updated, and it'll put a button that you can click to automatically call up the site's web page that allows you to change the password where it's available, and then it'll automatically generate the password, fill that out for you, and you're done. And then update itself with the new password. It also supports file attachments, TFA using OTP codes from Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator, and there's a few others they have listed as well. Nextcloud and OwnCloud Sync is still there, but they are deprecating it. I don't know what the reasons are behind that, but whatever the reasons are, I'm sure they have their reasons for it. They also have a synchronization service of their own called My Buttercup that you can use as well. And the password vault is stored locally. I thought it was kind of interesting. One other thing that I discovered with you're using the password vault is normally created by the desktop. And then there is a switch in the desktop app that you can turn on to allow it to communicate to a browser extension. And when you turn that on, the browser extension will ask you for both vault. It'll ask you for a new vault, and then it'll attach to the vault that is in the desktop. And then once it makes that connection, you can close the desktop vault, and the one it's using will be the one that it creates for the web pages. I don't know if it filters out from that only the ones it needs. I haven't dug into it. I haven't opened the vault that was created. I need to do that and do a little bit of digging and see why they do it that way. I'm sure they have the reasons for it. But YubiKey is not supported. UTF is not supported. TOT support is through the sync only at the moment. There is a CLI, and we already mentioned that it's an app image. So, like I said, though, they are always actively working on it. I mean, they do updates nightly. So they have a request. So if there's something, a browser you want supported or something that you need, maybe if they get enough requests for it, they'll add it in. I don't know. I can't guarantee that. And I'm sure they don't guarantee it either. So in general, how do they stack up? So Buttercup, I think, has the least number of features, but Buttercup's history was it was written basically as a personal tool by the author for his use. And as over time, it's kind of grown into one that is starting to become competitive with the big guys like KeePass XE and Bitwarden. So, yeah, I mean, I suspect it'll probably gain additional features over time, but currently I think it's lacking in these areas where, like, we don't have fallback codes, we don't have multi-factor, we don't really have two-factor support. Yeah, and I think some of those things are needed today to maintain a password manager, but yeah, KeePass a little bit better, has a little bit more capability, but again, I think KeePass was really written for an age gone by. And so today, however, I think the needs are for additional strength and additional capabilities. I'm sure that group is very good. I'm sure that they will add those over time, but their core focus is an offline utility, and it's not likely that they're going to add TOTP or UTF anytime soon. I don't know about YubiKey. YubiKey, possibly they could use YubiKey, but even that talks to their service somewhat too. So Bitwarden, yeah, secure and local vault only with the premium account. So I marked it no for the free. Password expiration monitor, I didn't find one, although there is a health check that is in there. One of the things I discovered was about their encryption being SHA-256, and so I have some concerns about that. Multi-factor, no. So none of these guys are really perfect, right? Yeah, but Buttercup, written in JavaScript. No, thank you. I would consider JavaScript to be a real secure programming language, and just because it's written in JavaScript, that creates a security concern of a major variety all by itself. So, yeah, not too keen on that. Plus, with Electron, it's a little sluggish at times, and so yeah. Not my choice. Sorry, not my choice. Good idea if you change the language, but yeah, JavaScript. Poor choice for a security app, guys. KeePass XC is a popular Linux password manager. It works in an offline mode, but I think its design is going to come up short in today's needs for a mobile app and the ability to sync and so forth and be able to manage 2FA across websites. Although, I think it's going to be multi-factor. It's really, if they're going to concentrate, I think they need to go to MFA. Bitwarden is by far the better choice with a free account and local hosting. You can get that for $10 a year. So, but I really believe that the 50-year-old model for passwords is at an end. I think that's rapidly coming to a close. And new ideas like Microsoft's password environment, passwordless environment, and Spectre's passwordless environment are probably the ways that things are going to move if it can be proven to be secure. I mean, that's a big if. We know none of these things exist today, and we don't have proof that they're any more secure than what we've got. So, yeah. But I do think passwords are dead. I started out, and most of the systems I worked on didn't even have passwords. They didn't need them. And it wasn't until my junior year that they started adding passwords to the systems because, well, kids being what we are, we would screw around with other people's accounts and do funny things to them, like change the program that would launch when they'd sign in and embarrass them in front of a bunch of people that were sitting with them. So anyway, yeah, we would do crazy things. And so I decided to go to passwords to circumvent some of the practical jokes that we used to play. I don't think that was the only reason. I think there was also some concern on being able to, keep things private, particularly when they were grading. The Spectre design team has a philosophy that says saving passwords in an app or uploading them to the cloud, that's a recipe for a personal disaster. Yeah, absolutely. Like Ollie, I believe that. And, I think you have to put this in perspective too. You have to look at it this way. To you, if you lose your all these passwords and your user IDs and anything else in the metadata, that's your life. I mean, that's everything all about you. And that's devastating to you, particularly if it's used to steal your identity. So, and that can be very expensive to try to fix. The other thing, on the other side, on the person that's providing you that service, to them, you're not that important. You're just a security risk assessment. So yeah, I mean, they just you're just a part of an equation. They don't really, probably even move the decimal point too far. So I mean, that's the one thing. It all really the only password that can't be lost or stolen or seized or ransomed or left on the bus is the one that doesn't exist, and that is so true. I mean, if it isn't there, you can't lose it. So yeah. And then the other thing is the person that's most likely to care about your security and your privacy and your identity is you, nobody else. So Spectre, what is it? It's free and open source. It is not a password manager. It is a password cipher. What the heck does that mean? So it doesn't send passwords across the network. It calculates the passwords that you need and only when you need them. I know that sounds kind of funny, but that's what it does. Once it does that initial setup for the calculation, it throws your password away. Once it's put it onto the other side, onto Twitter or Facebook, God forbid you're using Facebook, or somebody else, then it's all them. So, but it takes the password, gone. There's nothing there. So there's nothing to lose. So it's kind of an ROS philosophy, or remember one secret and then math does the rest. So you can think of it that way, ROS. So why? Well, as you just saw, Neiman Marcus just had a 4.2 million user data spill. And so, passwords are being scooped up all the time on websites. They're just like a vacuum cleaner out there. They just, as soon as they find a hole, they just suck all of the data out. And TOTP is vulnerable today. There are bots that are able to guess the next password and sequence, and they're able to gain access to your account even with a 2FA that's using TOTP. 2FA SMS has been broken for some time. I mean, that's easy to hijack. So yeah, as the cartoon says. I don't know which robot is real. Quick, say something and only my husband would know. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to guess who's real. Is it a robot that's is coming to the site as you, or is it you? And that's really the big problem here. There's no way to really identify you as you. So your identity is safe only when the sole gatekeeper is you. You don't want it held in a cloud account, and you don't want to store your identity on sites that might have unreliable actors. I've seen too many times where somebody has thrown passwords onto an S2 store on Amazon, and they didn't even bother to lock it down with a password or encrypt it. Corporations and state entities, corporations, as you've seen with Neiman Marcus, they're not alone. We've had major data spills in all parts of the industry. And then we have state entities that have lost data as well, either through hacks to get in the site and dumps the data, or I even remember years ago where people were traveling around with laptops with unencrypted data that had the user's passwords for all the people in their organization, plus all the people that were affiliated with that state agency, your driver's license, your everything. So, and they were left their laptop on a bus, and then somebody found it and going, hey, look at here, I got all this stuff, all this data. So yeah, not good. So Spectra's kind of focus is sustainable security should have no loopholes or caveats. It shouldn't come with a terms of service that limits their liability. It shouldn't be that, oh, I agree to give you access to all my data, and yes, you can track me all over the internet, and that's fine. And if you happen to spill all my data out to the world, well, I won't hold you accountable. You're fine. You're good. So yeah, that's not acceptable. It's going to require backups to make sure that if something happens to the data, I have a way to recover it. But if I don't have passwords to begin with, who cares? I don't expect blind trust, meaning that because I sign up for a service, I am now blindly trusting that organization with absolutely no input, no view into their operations at all. So you're just totally blindly trusting them to do the right thing. The password doesn't exist. It's mathematically given, and it creates a stateless identity that's immune to loss and immune to leaks. So it can be generated easily. So that brings us to how it actually does, and I'll blow this up for you. This is how it generates it. It takes your full name and then the key that you gave it. In this case, it's a four word randomized sequence of basic stuff. And then it combines those and creates a user key, a 64-bit byte, 64-byte user key, which is then merged in with a site key that comes from the website that you're coming, and then it generates takes the domain name and it generates the password that comes back. So yeah, and that's the password that gets stored ultimately on the site. Now, so as you can see, as far as your domain of it up in the graph, there's nothing there for you. There's nothing there to identify the password with you. So how does it work? Well, you sign into Spectre. You give it the 4-word or 3-word, in that last case, 3-word random sequence as your secret. And then you go to the website and you put the name of the website into Spectra, and then you change your old password to Spectra's password. If it's on Twitter, you go to Twitter's password change and do it there. And then from then on, you log into Spectra and access the website through there. Done. That's it. That's how it works. In theory, actually under the covers would probably take a little bit of work to come down through the code and see what it actually does. So I don't think I have. Oh yeah, I do have a couple of things. So websites are supposed to use one-way hashes to store your password. Now that'd be like Linux, right? So if you look at your Etsy shadow file, and then in there you'll see your name and then the hash for your password. That hash I cannot decrypt. There's nobody can decrypt that hash and determine what the password is. There's no way to do it. The way that Linux works is that when you log in, you give it a password, that goes in and creates a one-way hash out of the characters that you typed in, and then the two are compared. If they're the same, then you're allowed entry. If they're not the same, you're dropped and you get to enter it again. So That's how it works. That's a one-way hash. They're supposed to use one-way hashes, and that makes it harder for the attacker to guess what the actual password is. And it forces them down a path where they have to go compare the fingerprint, which is what the hash would be, to a group of passwords that are similar and see which ones match. It takes a lot longer to do that. So, yeah, a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult. The other thing that websites are supposed to do is use strong cryptographic algorithms, and some sites and some password managers are using SHA-256. Not a good idea. A few years ago, when SHA-128 went over the line, when it was dead, it's been dead for a while, but when that went over, I said, I don't think SHA-256 is going to be long because it's only double the amount of characters. So I didn't think it was going to be really a long time before it was obsolete. And yeah, here we are, 2021, it's obsolete. And some sites are still using it. Bad idea. It is pretty quick to crack that. So yeah, but the real concern is with websites that do things like reduce the password entropy intentionally to make things, I guess, easy for them. And what I'm talking about there is password entropy means that higher entropy means that you use a larger set of characters, like I use maybe additional upper and lowercase characters and I add the additions of special characters and numbers in order to come up with a sequence that's longer and more difficult to hack. The shorter ones will take less time. And a lot of these sites, some of them, will say, oh, you can only have 14 character long passwords. They have to be alphanumeric and one uppercase character. The rest can be lowercase, but numbers, fine, but no special characters. Why? Why are they doing that? That's stupid. They shouldn't be putting any kind of limit on the password or limitations where it reduces the entropy, because that puts you at risk. Because it's easier for someone to hack that site and get your password than it would be if it was a higher entropy password. So I think that's a bad practice, and it's one that we as people out in the community should be scolding them and saying, no, stop doing that. So that's my babble for today. I hope you enjoyed this. Look, I plan to come back and look at Spectre when it goes to RC. Like I said, I'll do beta software once in a while on exception, but I don't like, as a rule, to just take a look at it and then find a bunch of bugs in it. So if I'm testing it, that's one thing, but yeah. So I've done some work. I've played around with Bitwarden. I played around with KeyPass. I've used on and off because I do use cubes, and KeyPass is center to that. I have spent about a week working with Buttercup, even though, the capabilities of it could be better. It could be really good. It just, the language really concerns me. That's the only problem I have with it. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this today. Please let me know in the comments below if there's a favorite password manager of yours. Let me know what it is. I'd love to hear what your guys are using. And I hope to see you all again real soon. Please like and subscribe the video as always, and bye for now.